Right now, as you watch this, a government fund you have almost certainly never heard of owns a piece of the company that made your phone, a piece of the company that built the building you work in, a piece of the platform you use to find this video, a piece of almost every significant company in the developed world. It does not advertise. It does not issue press releases. Its managers do not appear on financial television. It simply owns, quietly, patiently, permanently accumulating stakes in the global economy at a scale that makes the world's most famous investors look modest by comparison. This is the world of sovereign wealth funds. And if you have never heard of them, you are not alone, which is precisely the point. Today on Wealth Map, we are mapping sovereign wealth funds, the most powerful and least understood investors on Earth, what they own, how they operate, why they were created, and what their strategy reveals about building wealth at any scale. Start with the scale, because until you understand the scale, nothing else about this story makes sense. Sovereign wealth funds collectively manage approximately $10 trillion in assets. $10 trillion. To place that number in context, the entire global hedge fund industry manages approximately $4 trillion. The entire global private equity industry manages approximately $8 trillion. The sovereign wealth fund world is larger than both combined and growing faster than either. The largest single fund is Norway's government pension fund Global. As of 2024, it manages over $1.7 trillion. It owns on average approximately 1.5% of every listed company in the world. 1.5% sounds modest. It is not. 1.5% of Apple is worth approximately $40 billion. 1.5% of Microsoft is approximately $35 billion. 1.5% of every major bank, every major energy company, every major consumer goods company, every major technology platform on Earth, owned by a single fund managed by a government of 5 million people in Northern Europe. Norway is a silent shareholder in the global economy, and it is not alone. The Abu Dhabi Investment Authority manages approximately $1 trillion. The China Investment Corporation manages over $1 trillion. Singapore's JIC and Temasek together manage over $800 billion. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund is targeting $2 trillion by 2030. These institutions collectively own the world, quietly, permanently, and almost entirely out of public view. To understand why sovereign wealth funds exist, you need to understand the specific problem they were created to solve. Every country that discovers a large natural resource, oil, gas, copper, diamonds, faces the same fundamental challenge. The resource generates revenue now, but the resource is finite. At some point, the reserves will be exhausted, or the world's demand for that resource will decline. The revenue will stop. Meanwhile, the resource revenue creates dangerous dependencies. Government budgets expand to match the inflows. Citizens develop expectations of services and subsidies that assume the revenue continues. The non-resource economy, manufacturing, services, technology atrophies because it cannot compete with the wages and opportunities generated by the resource sector. When the resource revenue eventually declines, and it always does, the adjustment is catastrophic. Government budgets collapse. Services are cut. Unemployment spikes. The non-resource economy that was suppressed during the boom is not there to absorb the shock. This is called the resource curse, and it has afflicted resource-rich countries across every continent, across every decade of modern history. Sovereign wealth funds were invented to break the curse by taking a portion of resource revenues and investing them in a diversified global portfolio of financial assets rather than spending them immediately on current consumption. A government can transform a finite resource into a permanent financial endowment. The resource runs out. The fund continues generating returns indefinitely. Norway discovered oil in the North Sea in 1969. It established its sovereign wealth fund in 1990. Today, Norway's fund generates enough annual returns that the Norwegian government can fund a significant portion of its budget from investment income alone, without touching the principal. The oil will eventually run out. The fund will not. But Norway's fund is remarkable for a reason that goes beyond its size or its returns. In 1998, the Norwegian government gave its fund a mandate that no other major investor in the world has matched in its ambition or its consequences. The fund would not invest in companies involved in certain activities, cluster munitions, nuclear weapons, tobacco. Over time, this exclusion list expanded. Companies with significant environmental damage, companies with serious governance failures, companies involved in human rights violations, and crucially, the fund would use its position as a major shareholder in thousands of companies to actively engage with corporate management on environmental, social, and governance issues, not as an activist, as an owner, quietly, persistently, and with the leverage that comes from being one of the largest shareholders in almost every major corporation on Earth. When Norway's fund sends a letter to a company's board, it is not a letter from a pressure group or a regulator or a journalist. It is a letter from an entity that owns billions of dollars of that company's stock and has the ability to vote those shares at every annual general meeting indefinitely. Corporate boards respond differently to that kind of letter. The Norwegian fund has used this position to push for changes in executive compensation structures, environmental disclosure standards, board diversity practices, and climate risk management across thousands of companies and dozens of countries, with a consistency and a persistence that no regulator, no government, and no activist campaign has been able to match. The world's most powerful force for corporate behavior change is not a government agency or a court. It is a fund in Oslo managing the oil revenues of 5 million Norwegians. The geopolitical dimension of sovereign wealth funds is the layer that most financial analysis overlooks. The largest funds, particularly those from China, the Gulf states, and Singapore, do not make purely financial investment decisions. Their investment choices serve national strategic interest in ways that are sometimes explicit and sometimes deliberately obscured. China's investment in African infrastructure through its sovereign vehicles serves the Belt and Road Initiative, building relationships, securing resource access, and establishing economic influence that translates into diplomatic leverage. The Gulf states' investments in European football clubs, luxury hotels, and technology companies build soft power and strategic relationships that complement their foreign policy objectives. Singapore's Temasek invests in companies that provide strategic capabilities, logistics, technology, financial infrastructure that serve Singapore's position as a global trading hub. When a sovereign wealth fund acquires a stake in a port, an airport, a technology company, or a financial institution, the question of whether it is a purely financial decision or a strategic one is rarely answered publicly, and in most jurisdictions, the regulatory framework for evaluating such acquisitions was designed for a world where this kind of investment barely existed. Now here is what all of this reveals that is directly applicable to how you build wealth. The sovereign wealth fund model, stripped of its national scale, is the clearest possible demonstration of three principles that any investor at any level can apply. First, invest resource income permanently rather than consuming it. Whether that resource is oil revenue or salary, the principle is identical. A portion of every inflow should be converted into permanent financial assets rather than current consumption. Second, diversify across geographies, asset classes, and time horizons so broadly that no single event can threaten the whole. Norway does not bet on Norway. It owns the world. Third, think in generations, not quarters. The Norwegian fund's investment horizon is not this year or next year. It is the financial security of Norwegians who have not yet been born. Every decision is made inside that time frame. These are not principles available only to governments with oil revenues. They are the principles of every wealth building strategy that has ever survived long enough to compound into something significant. The sovereign wealth funds simply implement them at the most visible possible scale. This is Wealth Map, where the strategies of the world's most powerful investors become visible, and where we separate what you can use from what is simply useful to understand. Subscribe, because the next map reveals how one man turned a failing computer company into the most profitable business model in human history, and why the real secret had nothing to do with computers.